So I have a Skyjack 4632 scissor lift, and my issue is it does not drive in the air. Just to show you, I have it on drive. I'm gonna give it some power. I don't know if you can hear it clicking, but it's clicking, it's trying. So if I come down here, and this little pothole guard, if I just kind of wiggle it, and I don't know if you could hear that click. Now it should drive slow while operated in the air. And the first thing I like to check when I come down here is open up the door, and you have a little limit switch right here. And now what that limit switch does is when it goes up in the air, this comes up and it goes, hey, I'm in the air. Now, as we can see, that limit switch is adjusted to the max. So when this is in the air, it should click out saying I'm in the air and drive slow. Now what it's doing is this is not coming all the way up. So that limit switch still thinks it's stuck in the ground, but the one over here is coming down, so it goes, I'm in the air, but this one's not down, so I must be on level. So what could cause this not to come up? Well, if you look right here, let me zoom out a little bit. You have this cam lock, and it should come all the way down, and this should come down. This is your pothole guard saying, hey, I'm on level ground, or there's not anything under me that's going to prevent me from being level, so I can go in the air. Well, as you can see, there is a little gap. Now what that gap is there is a bearing that goes, supposed to sit right in here. And that bearing has popped out. Now it's probably just from wear and tear and it being going up and down several times. It's just had its lifetime. So what I'm gonna have to do is I'm gonna have to take this out and replace it, because that bearing is shot inside there. So the first thing we're gonna wanna do is we got a bolt right here, and there's a bolt back here, and that just holds this plate on right here. And we're gonna take this plate off. You might need to loosen this because this kind of holds it up, but you should be able to just get it off. So the next thing we're gonna wanna do is this pin right here. You're just gonna pull it out. Simple. Now here comes the tricky part. Once we get this pin out, probably gotta take a pry bar and pry it open, or pry it out. But is you gotta wiggle this out, and it latches in here and in there. And it's also compressed, so you gotta be very careful not to aim it towards your face when you get it out, because it will shoot up a little bit. So one thing I did forget to mention, when you pull that pin out, there's gonna be tension on it. The way to get the tension off of it is raise your platform. And as you can see, I got the pin out, so now I'm gonna try and wiggle that compression rod out. So what I'm gonna do now is I got me a pair of locking pliers. This little piece right here, that's what you want to grip onto. Make sure they're nice and tight. Give it a good wiggle, make sure it's not going to come off, because you're going to be putting force on this. Now what you do next is you get your pry bar and get it under the little frame part and push down your pliers. This is kind of hard to do with just one hand. So I got it out, and it sits on that little square, kind of springs up around it so it stays in place. And you can see I got it on the edge now. I'm gonna pry back a little bit, and this is where you want to be careful.
see, it is spring loaded. Now we're gonna come up a little higher and get it out completely. Maybe. Come on, old girl. See if we can probably hammer that out. So here comes the trickiest part of this, is wiggling this out, because you got this lip back here, but you also have it sitting in here. So trying to wiggle it out and then wiggling it back in is also annoying. We're gonna see if we can get this out and get the new one back in. Oh, I got it out a little bit. As you can see, it's coming out right there. If I can just wiggle it out a little bit more.
Well, you just left me sitting there for over an hour.
So I like looking at what failed and everything when I take things off and replace them. But if we look at this one, like I was saying earlier, that bearing just came out. It's supposed to sit right in here. If you look at the new one, I need to go wash my hands before I put this one in. But that bearing is still sitting inside there. And what you're gonna do is this part right here sits in here. Alright, and you can kind of see this thing I'm moving around right there. You gotta make sure it's lined up in the hole, because if not, then you gotta take it all the way back out again. And then this part right here will sit right here. And what I like to do is, I'm probably gonna go through a pick and clean this out, all the gunk and everything that's just built up. But we'll be back. So one way I like to test to make sure that I got this piece in and this piece is I like to just lift this up, and you should see it moves. So that's how I know I got that piece in. And then if you come over to the compression spring right here, I got play in it. It should lift me up. So now we're ready to install this. Tip and trick number one, because if you miss this, it is the worst thing to try to replace and get back in position. So if you see right here, I have this lovely thing. You want to make sure that it is seated completely in there, which it does appear to be so. Sitting on that little rock. So you can see it just right there. So step number 2 is you got to make sure that this can go under there, and make sure it's just, you're gonna have to wiggle that in there, but you want this to kind of sit under this, so that when you pull this and it springs down, you want to pull that with pliers. You don't want to pull it with your finger, because if your finger gets caught in there when it comes down, it's gonna hurt. You want to line this up too. So we'll go ahead and get that done. So as you remember, it did not drive in the air. We are elevated probably about 9 feet. And we are driving slow in the air. So as you remember, it didn't drive in the air. Now we are elevated probably like 9 feet. Going slow, and I think we are good to go. We're gonna go ahead and put our little nice little head balls, but
put our little cover on. But as you remember, this sensor was sitting like right here on the old one because of that worn bearing. But as you can see now, it sits all the way flush and we are good to go.